Yes, I
Yeah?
can see that.
Okay, right. So let's get started.
Yes, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you for the intro, Simon. Good morning, everybody. Or like Simon mentioned as well, I guess good morning for most of you anyway, or good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. First of all, thank you, Simon, for giving me the opportunity to represent Nerdio during Tech Fest. You just mentioned over 2,000 people might be joining today, or at least registered. So great success. Congratulations on that as well. And you know, the lineup is awesome. So I'm expecting to see a couple of good sessions today. Welcome to this session, the Windows Virtual Desktop Magic Show. And of course, well, I say of course, but it's starring Nerdio Manager for WVD. And the magic will be around automation mostly. So showing you guys how easy it can be to automate just about everything you can do around WVD on a daily basis, and that everybody is able to work with WVD on a daily basis and to build it, manage it, optimize it, auto scale, and so on and so forth. I have a brief agenda. I'll start out with a brief introduction about myself as well, and the setup with regards to Manager for WVD, to talk a bit about the architecture, those types of things. We'll have a look at onboarding existing WVD environments, because that's something that we run into well, almost on a daily basis. People do not want to get rid of what they've already built, which of course makes a lot of sense. And we make that extremely easy, as you'll find out in just a couple of minutes. Of course, auto scaling for hosted shared environments, for one-to-one VDI type deployments as well. When it comes to personal assigned desktops, persistent desktops, that is, hostpool management, user application management, and of course we have a community edition available for you guys to have a play with as well. Like Simon mentioned, he is moderating this session at this time. Q&A should be open, so if you guys have any questions during this session, please leave them in the Q&A and we will be able to go over them once this session ends. So my name is Bas van Kaam. I'm currently the field CTO for the EMEA region with Nerdio. A very, very fun job to do. Basically responsible for the day-to-day operations, building out the community, doing new business, talking to a lot of partners and customers, and so on and so forth. And also involved with a lot of conferences, events like these ones, or this one as well today, of course. So I live in a small town called the Velsenbroek. It's near Amsterdam. That's probably the best way to describe it to you guys. I'm engaged to Tineke, and we have plans to get married later this year. So hopefully, because of the whole COVID situation, that can happen the way we would like it to happen, but we'll see. You know, first things first, so health is more important, of course. I'm a father of 3. I'm involved with various communities. I've written and worked on a couple of books, hundreds of blog posts in the meantime. I think the counter is up to almost 500 throughout the last couple of years. Do a lot of presentations. Nowadays, they're mostly about Nerdio, of course. And like I mentioned, I also spend a lot of time building out the tech insider community around Nerdio. And I have 1 or 2 slides on that coming up also. Podcast, so EUC Digest, which would be this logo. Hopefully you can see it. Give it a Google if you haven't heard it or listened to it before. Might be interesting for you guys. Lots of hobbies as well, or lots, you know, work is hobby, hobby became work, and vice versa. So I'm a pretty lucky guy if you consider it like that. I like to go out for a run a couple of times per week. So if you are on Strava as well, I'm always curious to see and find out what other people are doing for their health and you know, hobbies and stuff. And of course, active on my other socials also. And if you would like to get in touch in any other way, through email, my website, Twitter, LinkedIn, these are my direct links. And of course, this will be shared once the session is done. So please do get in touch. I would love to have a chat about Nerdio, about running, about WVD, about Azure, whatever you would like. So not a problem. Okay, Manager for WVD, the automation magic, as I promised you at the beginning of this session just a couple of minutes ago. So first off, why did we come up with Manager for WVD? Well, it's pretty straightforward actually, and I'm sure a lot of you listening today, joining the Tech Fest today can probably relate. So throughout the last year, I've spoken to more than 300 companies, all involved with WVD in some way or form, some more advanced, some just starting out. But a couple of things that all of these companies have in common is that they all mention, well, it can be quite hard to, to work with WVD, to do the ongoing management, to start out with it. And most of those companies have a lack of Azure knowledge, for example, because you need to know a thing or two about the underlying Azure platform as well to be able to work with successfully, that is, with WVD on a daily basis. The learning curve can be quite steep. Not that straightforward. Lots of manual tasks still involved. PowerShell, you can work with templates and all that kind of things, but it's not for everybody, and it can be quite complex as well. And of course, that's something that we take away almost instantly with Manager for WVD, as will become clear within the next couple of minutes, the next 30 minutes or so, when I'm going to show you the graphical user interface and all of the automation stuff that we've built in. So you don't also have to worry about knowledge leaving your company, for example, because everybody will be able to use the interface and to do all of those things, the optimizations, image management, and all those types of daily tasks, weekly tasks from the graphical user interface. Saving on costs, very important when cloud is involved. You need to have the right tooling. You need to know what you're doing. And again, that's something that we take care of, not just by the intuitive interface that we offer, but also by the various autoscale engines that we've built in. And hopefully I will be able to show you guys that as well. It's always a live demo that I do. Up till today, it's always gone, almost perfect. So hopefully that will be the case today as well. Of course, a feature gap, a lot of companies think or feel that WVD isn't production ready just yet because there's still some stuff missing. Well, as you'll hopefully find out shortly, we add a ton of additional functionalities and features on top of the native WVD service. That's basically what we do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. That's all we focus on. It needs to be efficient, it needs to be easy, and so on and so forth. So I can probably skip the first two, ease of management. 80 or 90% of your IT workforce should be able to do all of those things to set up the automation, to set up the auto scaling, to optimize your workloads, and so on and so forth, without any deep knowledge of the underlying Azure platform, PowerShell, or anything like that. And of course, that makes it easy to save a bit on costs as well, because you will save hours of work per week. And of course, the auto scale engines will help you to save a ton of cash, basically, on the underlying Azure compute and storage resources as part of your WVD deployment. Reinforcing existing security has everything to do with how the solution is built, which components are part of the solution on Manager for WVD. It's a native Azure application, if you will, but we'll get to that on the next slide. And also it has everything to do with how the solution is deployed. Which brings me to the more, you could say, technical part of the presentation. And shortly after this, I will start the demo, of course. So Manager for WVD is a standalone application. It's not multi-tenant. It's actually split-tenant, if you will. And I'll show you that as part of the solution in just a minute. And it's deployed within your own tenant, meaning it's not a Azure managed application, a hosted shared platform somewhere in Azure that we manage for you and you get access to. So no traditional legacy VMs are needed or anything like that. No, it's a fully Azure native service deployed within your own tenant, which also means you have full control. From a security perspective, together with your IT partner, for example, you decide who else gets access, if that is at all necessary, of course. Excuse me. It's deployed from the Azure Marketplace, which also means it is available in all regions worldwide. And this is what that would look like from a high level perspective. So the Marketplace, the various customers and their tenants deployed within the subscription. And as you can see here, Nerdio Manager for WVD is built out of various platform as a service services. So again, no VMs, no legacy technology or anything like that. 100% Azure native, which also means Microsoft will take care of these services for you. You don't have to manage the application Manager for WVD yourself. Microsoft will make sure these services are highly available, they are secure, and so on and so forth. And this also makes the platform very powerful from auto scaling perspective, management, and so on, but also very flexible from a development perspective. This architecture also enables us, the people at Nerdio, to come out with new versions of Manager for WVD on at least a monthly basis, and sometimes even 2, 3, 4 times a month, bigger and smaller updates following each other. Right, so having said that, just a little bit of marketing, as you could see, but not too much, hopefully. Let me hop over to my portal. Oh, this is, by the way, the Nerdio Tech Insider community program. As you can see, it's been growing quite extensively throughout the last couple of months. So if you do a Google for Nerdio and meetup, perhaps you would like to join. And as you can see, we've had a lot of cool sessions throughout the last couple of months, and we're aiming to do at least one monthly. And it's not just Nerdio, by the way. Last time we had a session on ephemeral OS disk together with WVD and how they can be leveraged and used and to your advantage to save on money, cost, to speed things up, and so on and so forth. So those types of sessions are in there as well. So again, it's available through the Azure Marketplace. I'm not going to show you that process. First of all, it will take a bit too long, of course. The installation will take 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the region you are deploying into, how busy Azure is, so the time of day might matter, those types of things. So out of our control, you could say. But again, 30 to 45 minutes, and then you will end up in this graphical user interface. And all you need to do to get started, open up Azure, type in Nerdio somewhere in the search bar, or go within the marketplace and search for Nerdio over there. And that's basically it. Hit create, a basic Azure wizard will pop up. All you need to do is fill in a couple of fields, and then, well, it's quite boring. Actually, all you have to do is wait for 30 to 45 minutes. And sometimes it's even faster than 30 minutes, or it can take a bit longer than 45 as well. But anyway, you will end up in this graphical user interface, which, of course, to start out will be empty because you won't have anything configured yet or onboarded and so on and so forth. So let me start with showing you a couple of things under settings. And basically everything that you see and set and configure under settings, you need to think about as it being the default configuration that Manager for WVD is built on top of. You can add things, remove things, change things, as you'll see shortly. But most of all of the settings under settings are configurable on a per host pool basis as well. And that's something I will be able to show you as part of the demo today as well. So first, the Azure environment. Like I mentioned, it's sort of split tenant, and that means you will always have one primary AD tenant responsible for identity, so authorization, authentication, those types of things. And you can add in multiple tenants, but just for VM purposes, if you will. You can, however, add in multiple subscriptions per tenant, so that's the flexibility you do have additionally on top of your tenants, like I just explained. And as you can see, you can work with as many networks and resource groups as you would like. And all you need to do is click link and then search for any available resource groups or link networks that you might have. And of course, adding in a network starts with a resource group first as well, which would then hold a network, a subnet, and so on and so forth. But the thing is, if you already have an existing WVD deployment, or one of your customers have, and you would like to use Manager for WVD to manage that going forward, all you need to do is link the network and the resource group that that WVD environment is deployed into. Once that's done, you'll hop over to tenants or workspaces, depending on if it's a newer or older version of Manager, or not Manager for WVD, of course, of WVD. Let's assume it's a newer one. Then all you have to do is do a page refresh, and then that existing environment will pop right up. And this button will say associate with Manager for WVD or associate workspace, something to that extent. And then you will be able to do the exact same thing with the underlying machines as part of your host pools as well. And that's basically it. And it works exactly the same way for tenants also. If we hop over to the Nerdio environment, a couple of things here I'd like to briefly mention. So if you would like to use notifications to get alerts and all those types of things, which hopefully we'll have time to go over in a bit more detail as well, link your mailbox so you can get notifications. So that would be step one, for example, to enable that. But again, we'll get to that hopefully a bit later. Licensing can be changed on the fly as well. We have named and concurrent licensing. If you would like to learn a bit more about that, just leave me a note. And the object model has to do with, well, it's set to hybrid here, and it has to do with what you are able to manage from within Manager for WVD, meaning just tenants, just workspaces, or both. In this case, it's both, and that's because it has been set to hybrid. And a couple of other things usually used together with the help desk from Nerdio, for example, just some monitoring going on, because if these things don't work, Manager for WVD probably doesn't work. So just a couple of things to keep an eye on, which you can be alerted on as well, by the way. Integration. So this is where the automation fun and the magic, I should say, starts as well. We have multiple integrations and many more on the way as well, because this product is evolving almost on a daily basis. It's pretty cool to see. So first of all, you can work with multiple Active Directories. And as you might know, you are technically able to sync up multiple traditional Active Directory environments up to Azure Active Directory as well. So you might even be able to work with different Active Directories per host pool. And again, I'll show you the configuration steps for that later on. And we have integrations with, as you can see, Azure Logics, Azure Files, Azure Netapp Files, a couple of other things, monitoring solutions, which are building a strategical partnership that we have with the German company Sepago to be able to leverage their Azure monitoring solution. And we have a direct integration with WVD workbooks as of the native platform as well. And this has been built in just last week and is part of the latest release 2.8.0 of Manager for WVD. So if you go and download it today, this will everything you see here will be part of that solution or that version as well. So if you would like to use Azure Files, for example, all you need to do is follow the wizard. Extremely easy to do, fill in the fields, select from the drop-down menus, and everything, including joining it to the AD, joining it to your domain, will be done for you. And everything that needs to be done, needs to be taken care of on the underlying Azure platform will be done for you as well. And that applies to Azure Netapp Files as well. For example, the wizard looks a bit different, but the end result will be exactly the same thing. Azure Logics or profile containers, I should say, but here you can configure, for example, the storage location, which can be an Azure Files location, of course. And together with the registry options you would like to use to configure Azure Logics. But again, this is the default configuration, and all this can be changed on a per host pool level as well. Now, let's say we've added in a couple of networks and resource groups, and a new tenant has popped up because we've done a page refresh. As you can see, tenants will pop up here. And then we enable you also, and we've had this built in for over 6 or 7 months now, to migrate the older version of WVD to the newer ARM-based model. Pretty straightforward to do. As you can see on the screen, all you need to do is select the tenants you would like to migrate over to your destination workspace. If you have multiple, of course, just select them. Perhaps change the name and choose what you would like to do with your user assignments as well. So think of this as being the metadata as part of your host pool. This will be migrated very quickly, just a couple of seconds, together with any auto-scale configurations that you might have already, for example. But of course, we also enable you to migrate over the underlying VMs as part of this that host pool. For example, you can do multiple at the same time, 5, 10, 15, if it's a bigger host pool, for example. How many things are allowed to fill before this whole process will be halted? And of course, this can be all scheduled at will as well. So it can happen at night, for example. If it runs into any active user sessions still while doing the migration of the underlying VMs, first the users will be notified, as you can see here, and then 10 minutes after that, or 50, 30, 45, whatever you would like to configure here, the migration will actually be executed. So migrate if you would like to do it at this time, unless you've set a schedule, of course. And then after the migration, they will pop up within your workspaces, of course, and here you can see multiple host pools already as part of this demo and development and Q&A environment, because this environment that I'm showing you now is being used by Nerdio to do, constant development, the Q&A process that comes with it, and so on and so forth as well. So while doing demos, it might happen that I see new features being added overnight, for example, that I didn't saw the day before, which also makes it a fun process to do demos. Perhaps not all day, every day, but at least a couple of times per week, I notice those new things every now and again. So let me start at the beginning with adding in a new workspace, just to show you guys how easy it is, how quick it works, and what you need to do for that. So you can give it a name. That can be any name, of course. Cannot be changed later, so give it some thought, and of course the friendly name as well, because that's something that your users will be able to see, though it can be changed later on as well, as you can see on the screen also. Work with a description if that's something you would like to do, and of course a resource group to deploy this workspace into, and this would be the metadata location. And as you can see, we've added North and West Europe almost instantly as of day 1 as well. Click OK. Let me see, what did I do? Oh, and I need to select a location, of course, otherwise I cannot click OK. There we go. This will just take a couple of seconds, as you can see on the screen as well. And then we are able to add in one or multiple host pools. Now here you can see we have two types, two kinds, dynamic and static. And static would mean adding in machines manually, removing machines manually, handy for testing purposes and so on and so forth. But preferably, we would like to have our auto scaling engine to take care of that for you, of course. So starting machines, stopping machines, building new machines, removing machines, monitoring and healing machines, those types of things. And again, putting those machines into drain mode and all those types of things. So that's something I would like to show you as part of creating a dynamic host pool. Again, same thing, give it a name, description if you would like. And here you can choose the desktop experience that you would like to offer to your users. So the top one means a hosted shared desktop environment, of course. Perhaps you would like to do published applications, a VDI type scenario perhaps, meaning in a one-to-one relation, meaning every user would get one VM in a non-persistent state. And the bottom one is sort of the same thing, but these are personal assigned persistent desktops. And we have a separate autoscale engine for those as well, which will come by shortly. The name prefix, this is something you would like to give some thought, because the name prefix is used by the autoscale engine to give all of your machines that it will build for you a unique name. What it will do, it will use your name prefix and it will generate an alphanumeric string which will be appended to the name prefix you fill in here. And that's how all of your machines will get a unique name. Now, it will also be able to reuse that name once a machine has been removed again. So let's say user demand increases, a new machine has been added, user demand decreases, a machine has been completely removed, and then a couple of days or a couple of hours later, the machine is needed again because user demand has been increased. And then it will be able to reuse the same names as used before. So that's handy with applying GPOs or whitelisting certificates and all those types of things, and probably more that you can think of. Of course, we would need to select a network for these machines to connect to and a desktop image to be applied to those machines. I'll just select one now, but as you can see, we have a lot of integrations going on here as well. And that's something I will talk about in a bit more detail with regards to adding in images, doing image management and updates, existing host pools, creating new host pools like this. So that's something that you then have seen already. But again, there's much more to tell and show around desktop images and the management that comes with it. Let me just pick this one. And as you can see, we can work with all of the VM sizes available within your region, together with this, the OS disks available for those VM sizes. Of course, these might differ depending on the VM size that you might pick. And then you can do a quick assign as well, together with a resource group, of course, to deploy this dynamic host pool into. But quick assign would mean adding in a couple of users or groups of users or assign them to this host pool. That's what I mean. I always do and show that afterwards because you will have a much better and broader overview, as you'll find out shortly as well. Click OK. Now, this will just take a bit longer as when compared to creating the workspace, like I did a couple of minutes ago. It's now loading up the autoscale configuration page, and it should pop up within now in a couple of seconds. And then we will be able to finish the configuration of this dynamic host pool, tell it how many machines we would like to have part of it, and so on and so forth. There we go. So it's disabled by default. Of course, we would like to enable it. And here you can see the information we just selected and filled in together with the reuse host names as well. So you can deselect that, so disable that as well if there's a use case for that. Now, all of these fields can be freely filled in and, of course, selected from the drop-down menus, except for percentages. Those are from 0 to 100, of course. But the number of machines you are able to work with is only limited by the limits of Azure itself, so the underlying platform, for example. So 2 can be 23, 5 can be 50. This can be turned into 2 as well, for example. And then keep an eye on what happens when I do that, and I'll do it again in just a minute, with the minimum and maximum cost with regards to the underlying compute and storage costs as part of this WVD host pool. So this would be your maximum and minimum, and all of this will be changed on the fly when you, for example, select a more expensive or cheaper one VM size template, for example, over here. Or when I change 2 back into 5, you can see the prices change as well. Let's turn it back to 2 for demo purposes. But this will give you an indication of your minimum and maximum cost with regards to the compute and storage costs involved with this specific host pool. And of course, your actual monthly costs will be somewhere in between because you never can predict user demand beforehand, which makes sense, hopefully, to you guys as well. So let's hop over to host pool sizing. Now, here we tell the autoscale engine that we would like to have a base host pool capacity of 2 machines, meaning 2 machines will always be part of this specific host pool. And then below that, we tell it one of those machines needs to be turned on, to take care of the user experience outside of office hours, for example, in the weekends, whatever the case may be. Though you can set this to 0 as well, of course, if you would like to go for 100% cost optimization. But setting it to 1 or 2 or multiple, especially within bigger environment, it's something that we see quite a lot in daily practice with various companies globally. And we have hundreds of customers using it in this way, using the Autoscale engine on a daily basis, of course. So we have some knowledge on that end. So 2 machines, one will be in a booted state and the other one will be shut down. That also means that the other one will be booted as soon as user demand increases, which of course has something to do with, or has everything to do with, the scaling logic. But let me finish this part first. Now it will boot up the other machine when needed. If both of those machines, and I say both because that's what applies in this example, of course, it can be 20 machines as well. Like I just mentioned, you are free to fill in anything you would like. But if both these machines are running and it's still not enough to handle the user load, we can also tell the Autoscale engine that it is allowed to build 2 additional machines, in this example, on top of the base host pool capacity, making it a total of 4 machines. So these machines will be booted and shut down, and these machines will be built from scratch and also be completely removed once they are no longer needed. So you won't pay anything for that, for those machines, once they are removed, of course. Which brings me to the scaling logic. And here we can work with CPU usage, average active sessions and available sessions, as you can see here as well. And by the way, we have all these information icons throughout the whole product. Use them. They are sort of your first line help desk support directly built in. It will tell you exactly what it is that you are configuring, where you can go to for some additional information, perhaps including a couple of links here and there, those types of things. Very handy. I used them a lot when I started out almost a year ago as well. As you can see, very handy to to get the ball rolling, so to speak. Now then here we can tell the Autoscale engine what it needs to do. So for example, when CPU utilization exceeds 65% for 5 minutes or longer, I wanted to add in 1 machine. So scale out with 1 machine or multiple, of course. And do the same thing with removing or shutting down, scaling in 1 or multiple machines when utilization drops below 40% for 5 minutes or longer, as you can see here as well. So this is all very handy, but we would like to have a bit more detail to work with. So a couple of things we can do additionally on top of that. We can tell the Autoscale engine when it is allowed to stop and remove scale in machines and when it is not allowed to do that, for example. So let's say we pick 6 p.m. in the afternoon, beginning of the evening, until let's say 8 a.m. in the morning, depending on your time zone, of course. So now we tell the Autoscale engine that it is only allowed to stop or remove machines. So removing means scaling in machines, completely destroying the machines, as of 6 p.m. in the afternoon, beginning of the evening, until 8 a.m. in the morning, which also means vice versa, that during the work hours, so the hours outside of this time window, it will leave those machines alone. That means it will still boot up machines if needed when user demand increases. It will also build new machines when user demand increases according to this configuration here. And depending on what happens within your environment, it will just not shut those machines down or scale them in. Because the idea would be your users are productive, active, would have active sessions, and so on and so forth. So you don't want to bother them during work hours. You can still do that, of course, if that's something you would like to do. But again, this is something that we see configured as a daily practice very often. So very handy, but it gets even better because this can all be combined with scale in aggressiveness. And here we basically tell the Autoscale engine what it is allowed to do as of 6 p.m. So if you set it too high, what will happen is once the Autoscale engine is allowed to start having a look which machines it might be able to turn off, shut down, scale in, whatever the case may be. If it's set too high, it will first put machines in drain mode, then it will look for empty machines and scale those in or shut those down. And then it will follow the route of the machines with the least number of active sessions and again follow that, keep following that route. If it shuts down a machine with still active users, or with active users, again, users will be notified, same as with the migration part I showed you guys at the beginning, and then 10 minutes or 15, 30, whatever you would like to configure. After that, the machines will be actually shut down or scaled in. If you set it to medium, sort of the same thing, drain mode first, empty machines after that, and then it will only look for machines with disconnected sessions, and it will leave all of the other machines alone. And if you set it to medium, you probably guessed it, again, drain mode, and it will only look for machines that are already empty, and it will leave all of the other machines alone. So this is how we take care of, the user experience, cost optimization, and the fine line between those two. But there's more, of course. We can also in between pre-stage hosts. So let's say from Monday till Friday, we would like to have a certain number of machines booted and ready to go at a certain time. So let's say 8 a.m. in the morning, which would work fine in this specific example. Meaning, in a booted state, we'll take care of login storms, boot storms, the user experience in general, of course. And by the way, all of this, if you might be familiar with ephemeral OS disks, it works perfectly in conjunction with this complete configuration I'm just showing you guys as well. If you aren't familiar with ephemeral OS disk, drop me a line and we can have a chat about that as well. Pretty cool stuff, and it can again help you to speed up your environment and to save on underlying storage cost, for example, together with Manager for WVD, even additionally on top of what you are already saving with auto scaling in general. Pretty neat stuff. So auto heal broken hosts. This is a pretty cool feature also, which we are getting a lot of good feedback on. So the WVD agent status, or can give back certain statuses, I should say. So the WVD agent can have certain statuses, can be in certain statuses, multiple to think about and select. You can add in multiple as well. Basically creating a rule together with no active sessions, no sessions, or has active sessions. And then you can tell the autoscale engine what it needs to do when something like this occurs, when it notices that something is wrong with one of your hosts, or perhaps even multiple. For example, reboot those machines multiple times with so many minutes in between, and or remove and recreate. So completely remove and rebuild the machine, which will definitely solve your issue, because as part of that process, it's something that the autoscale engine is incredibly good at. And that's where the magic happens, if you will. You know, the image will be reapplied, it will be rejoined to the domain, agents will be reinstalled, will be reconfigured depending on how you have configured it and set it on a per host pool level, or perhaps depending on how you have configured it on the settings, for example, together with monitoring and all those types of things. Or you can leave it as is and then have a look for yourself. But of course, if you would take care of this fully automated, you would still have users calling your help desk perhaps, but in the meantime, your problem will be solved for you without lifting a finger, basically. So this is all still part of configuring a dynamic host pool. So lots going on, but as you can see, if you go by it step by step, pretty easy to set up still. I will hit save now. So it's now kicking off the autoscale process. It's building the dynamic host pool, and it will notice that it is still empty. So that's why it's triggering the autoscale process to build those two machines for us. And this usually takes somewhere around 15 to 20 seconds, but we should see two separate jobs being created, and then we can have a look at the details to see what's going on within those jobs as well, which would then do an auto refresh also. There we go. So let's see what's going on. As you can see here, you can follow all of the steps being executed by Manager for WVD, even per hour, per day, per date. It will notify, it will show you the user who might have started the task manually. As you can see, it will do an auto refresh and so on and so forth. And these details are available for just about anything or everything that Manager for WVD can do for you, as you can see. You can always hide these, but you can always go back into logs and then have a look at everything that has happened for the last 30 days and filter, for example, on all of the statuses, as you can see, but also on all of the different tasks that Manager for WVD can do for you, like I just mentioned, like adding in a host, for example. And if we have a look at the complete one, again, all of the steps together with the various logs directly available for you to download from the underlying VM for troubleshooting purposes, for example. So first of all, you will see an error message, which might help to point you in the right direction to getting the issue resolved. But then again, you can use or download the logs in the .zip format if you would click one as well. So pretty cool stuff. So that's now building, and let's have a quick look. I won't go into exact the same detail as I just did, but we have a separate autoscale engine for personal assigned desktops as well. And as you can see, it's pretty straightforward to go back into your autoscale configuration. This would be the same way for you to open it up as with the other configuration I just showed you. Same menu, same couple of clicks. So personal assigned persistent desktops looks a bit different, but the end result will be exactly the same. You will only have machines running when they need to be running, and not when your users are, asleep or at night, perhaps even early in the morning, and so on and so forth. So here we have power of aggressiveness instead of scaling aggressiveness, but again, you can set it to high, medium, and low, and it also means the same thing. This is a VDI type deployment, meaning in a one-to-one relation, so we don't have drain mode here, for example. But again, if you set it to high, the scaling engine, depending on the times that you configure here, of course, that's exactly the same concept. Once it is allowed to shut down machines, it will go and have a look according to which rules it is allowed to shut down machines. And if you set it too high, it is allowed to also shut down machines with an active session on it, first notifying the active user, of course. So this is the same messaging mechanism that we've seen come by a couple of times already. Power of timing works in conjunction with power of aggressiveness. So once it is allowed to shut down machines, it will do so depending on what you have configured here and here as well. So continuously would make sense to go for 100% cost optimization, for example. But then if you set this too high, you need to think about that, because then it's allowed to also shut down machines with an active session. And if you do that continuously after working hours, it will also bother your users, employees that might be working outside of office hours or in the weekend. So probably want to set this to medium then, and then it is only allowed to shut down machines with no sessions or disconnected sessions, and it will at least leave those machines with active sessions alone. So again, it looks a bit different, but the end result will be exactly the same. Now, the cool thing is we can also combine this with a role-based access role that we've built in. And as you can see, we have multiple small differences between these roles. We have a 1-minute read KB article telling you exactly what those differences are. But here I'd like to focus for a minute on the end user role. If users have a personal assigned desktop within Manager for WVD together with the end user role assigned as well, they will be able to go into Manager for WVD themselves, so log into the same console as the admins, for example. And the only thing that they will see is their own personal assigned desktop, and they will be able to start and restart their machine themselves. So giving them a bit more flexibility or responsibility, if you will. And they will also be able to log off their sessions, and they will be able to do the same thing. So logging off their sessions for any hosted shared host pools that they also might be a member of, for example. Of course, they won't be able to start, stop, and restart those because multiple users will be affected. Right, so that's on auto-scaling. Let's have a look at desktop image management. Also, a couple of pretty cool features to show you guys. So first of all, we have a couple of ways to get started with importing. Now, you don't have to import your images to be able to use them within Manager for WVD to build new host pools or to re-image existing host pools. You can use your images directly from the underlying Azure platform as well as part of one of your image libraries or the shared image gallery, for example, as you saw in the beginning as well when we created a host pool. But of course, if you do so, you will have the added advantage of being able to manage everything from the same portal around your WVD infrastructure. And of course, some of the management features around image management that I'm going to show you now. So first, let's have a look at importing an existing VM that you might have purposely built for this case, or perhaps a VM that you might have been using for a couple of weeks already, or a couple of months. And all it needs to be is a managed disk underneath. So we can copy over the SAS URL, paste it into here, have a look at some of the other options here that we've seen come by a couple of times already, and then look at additional configuration options you want to perhaps give it before you do the import. So as you can see, multiple gems, I always like to call them, built in to make managing WVD in general, but this is specific to image management, of course, as easy, but also as efficient as it possibly can be. So it will take you a couple of hours, perhaps 1 or 2 days to get to know the solution. But once you are up and running, you will notice that we have a lot of cool stuff built in. So scripted actions, for example, and I'll show you the library which we have over here in just a minute. So apply your own custom scripts or use the existing ones that we have predefined for you, for example. And this is all configurable and applicable to per host pool as well. So you can all apply this on a host pool as well, not just with importing an image, of course. Run PowerShell code and so on and so forth. Click OK, and the import will take 20-25 minutes, depending on how busy Azure is, how big the image is, and so on and so forth, or the VM, I should say. So adding in images from the Azure library, even more flexibility. We can work with the custom-made images, which I also used to create the host pool we just had a look at as part of the dynamic scaling options. We have a direct integration with your own library, so these would be your Azure custom images. And like I mentioned, an integration with the shared image gallery also. And again, you do not have to import these, but of course you will have the added advantage of being able to use all of these management features as well. So once imported, you would be able to start these images, of course, to make your changes. And first you can choose to make a backup for 1 or multiple weeks. And if the retention period expires, it will only throw away the backup and it will leave the original image alone. And then once it is in a booted state, this button will change into power off and set as image. And then you will be able to use the name, for example, or the IP address to RDP into that machine, or use whatever connection mechanism you would like. Make your changes, install software or update software, install security updates, whatever the case may be, do anything that you would like. And of course, we take care of everything in the background with booting up a machine, attaching it to the image, and so on and so forth. Once done, you'll click on power off and set as image, and then we will take care of all of the sealing, the sys prepping, and everything that needs to be done to get it ready to be applied to an existing host pool, or to use it to build a new host pool, for example, or again, to resize, re-image an existing one. Couple of other things. For example, if you have made multiple backups, you can use the restore option as well. So you would have versioning. You can go back one or multiple versions if it doesn't work out in test production, whatever the case may be. Of course, you can start a backup manually as well. You can delete it. You can also make a clone. And if you then select a different network, or a network in a different region, I should say, it will clone it over to that region as well, together with the options you just saw as part of adding in an existing Azure VM as well. Let me see, clone, change. The change log will be part of, if you have made a couple of changes, installed updates, and so on and so forth, you will be able to leave a note for yourself, for your colleagues, just, you know, the reason why you did the update, or what the update entitled, or something like that. Handy to have, of course. So let's hop over to an existing workspace and host pool, because then you would be able to go over to the host menu, and as you can see, a lot more going on here. Manual tasks as well, of course, if that's something you would like to do. So activate, deactivate would be putting those machines into drain mode, but then manually, for example. And of course, these are speak for themselves. Now let's have a look at Resize Re-Image. So here you will be able to, for example, select the desktop image you might have just updated, or directly select from the Azure Marketplace, or an Azure custom image, and you don't have to reconfigure anything once applied. So you don't have to rebuild your host, you don't have to reassign users. That's all been taken care of for you, or will be taken care of for you. And again, the shared image gallery is available here as well, even if those images are not imported, like I mentioned at the beginning. Change or choose what you would like to do with your VM size in the underlying OS disk at this time, if that's something you would like to do. And you can also tell it how many hosts you would like to have re-imaged at the same time. So this is the same as with the migration part from the older to the newer model of WVD. Again, how many failures are allowed, and this can all be scheduled as well, and even be repeated if that's something you would like to do. And with regards to setting up automation, there's a lot more we can do around setting up a whole automation street, if you will, with auto update of your images, auto apply your images to host pools on a weekly basis, monthly or daily basis even. Much more to tell and show outside of this session, if you might be interested in that as well. And again, the messaging mechanism applies here as well. If it's re-imaging and it runs into any active sessions, again, they will be notified first, and then 10 minutes, 15, the same story here applies also. As part of re-imaging, we will not touch the underlying VM NIC, meaning DNS won't change, IP address will stay the same. Of course, we are able to reuse the host names, like I mentioned at the beginning, so you won't have to worry about that whole process also. So pretty neat, right? So with regards to integrations, I mentioned a lot of this is configurable on a per host pool basis as well. So let's have a look at some of those things. So first of all, let me start with assigning users and groups, because I mentioned as part of creating a host pool, I always do and show that afterwards. Well, here you go. Just search for the groups or users that you would like to assign to a host pool, click assign, unassign, whatever needs to be done. And that's basically all you need to do. So on the properties, you will be able to configure a whole bunch of things separate per host pool, as you can see. So work with different AD configurations, perhaps different OUs per host pool, which is something that we see a lot in production environments, of course. A couple of other things as well. So WVD means changing the load balancing mechanism of the native WVD service. So if you have a use case for that, you can do that as well. And VM deployment is a very cool one as well. So here again, you have these scripted actions that you can apply on a per host pool basis, your own scripted actions, the ones that we have predefined for you, and so on and so forth. Run custom PowerShell code and have a look at all of the goodness here. So again, some of the magic I wanted to share with you guys today. If you would like to use availability zones for the machines in this host pool, just click or check the box and you'll be good to go once you click OK. And a whole bunch of other automated stuff built in, too much to go over now, but at least hopefully you will have a good overview or at least an idea of the possibilities and options that you have using Manager for WVD like this. Properties, custom RDP. This is a very neat one as well, extremely simple. Also how it looks and feels, of course. So this would be your RDS session settings with regards to user sessions. And of course, there are a lot more to get to, the more advanced ones, as we like to call them. Easy to get to, easy to configure, as you can see here as well. So what's next? Of course, we can do tagging. So this would mean tagging your resources directly from within Manager for WVD. And of course, you will be able to use those tags on the underlying Azure platform for billing purposes, for example, as well. As logics, which was an example I used earlier also. So by default, this will be checked, meaning it will use the default settings as set configured under the settings page, so under integrations. But if you would like to divert from that, you can use a different storage location, for example, different registry options, because you can see that will change. There you go, less, more, and so on and so forth. So again, per host pool. The monitoring solutions can be enabled, disabled per host pool as well. And this is a very handy one to have also. Session time limit. So for example, when does an idle session needs to be turned into a disconnected session? When does a disconnected session needs to be logged off? And so on and so forth. So this, of course, works in conjunction with autoscaling. As you think back, let's say 15 minutes, I mentioned, you can configure your autoscale engine to only shut down machines with disconnected sessions, for example, after working hours. So this would work perfectly side by side. And by the way, with regards to more user management, if we would have any active sessions, which we don't have now because of the demo environment, of course, but you would have multiple filtering options to search for the users you would like to manage at that time. You would be able to send them messages, to do shadowing, to log off their sessions, to put them in a disconnected state, and so on and so forth, all from the same management interface also. So let's hop over to scripted actions for just a minute. So we can work with scripts directly applicable to the host pools. We have various Azure runbooks as well, predefined, as you can see here. And you will always be able to add in your own scripts, of course, so building out your own library. Or you can also view these, so the existing ones, I mean, perhaps do a clone, and you will be able to reuse the code or change it slightly as well, which might be helpful with applying optimizations, for example. So you can exactly leave in or leave out whatever you would like. Now, it's always about hiding all of the complexity for you, but we also would like to enable you. So if you are deep into PowerShell, if you see the added advantage because you know how to use it, that you can still do that as well, like this, for example. Let me see. So users and roles, it's something that we already covered. So with notifications, like I mentioned, you can link your various mailboxes under integration, so under settings, and then here you will be able to, to create notification conditions. You can set the targets, which can be just about anything that's available within Manager for WVD and your WVD platform. All of the tasks that are available within Manager for WVD, you can be notified of. By which user, even more specifically, if that's something you need, and of course the statuses you would like to be notified on as well. As you can see, so pretty easy to set this up. Will just take you a couple of minutes and you'll be off and running. So integrations, we also have a direct integration with MSIX App Attach, which I skipped at the beginning. And of course, we have a REST API as well, which I won't cover in detail today. But if you would like to find out more about that, not a problem, of course. But MSIX App Attach and using MSI App Attach packages is sort of a three-step process. So first, we would need to link a library, if you will, so a storage location to store your MSIX App Attach packages in the form of images. And this needs to be a file share, an Azure file share, to be a bit more precise. So if you don't have any, of course, you can use the wizard right here to generate one. This will only take a couple of minutes, by the way. It's a very quick process, perhaps 5 minutes at max. And then you will be able to add it as part of a MSIX App Attach storage location. One of the next things you would need to do is go over to I'm just getting a notification that I have 5 minutes left, so I timed this perfectly, I think. This would be one of the last things I wanted to show you guys. So under AppAttach, we can work with, for example, existing images that you might have holding various AppAttach packages, or you can work with MSI X packages as well, and then we will help you to migrate them over to an MSIX AppAttach package, so to be part of one of your images, for example. And as you can see, we have image versioning for these built in as well. And finally, this would be step number 3. You would hop over to an existing host pool, hop over to manage, and not users and groups, but MSIX AppAttach. And then here you will be able to basically enable it, disable it, add in your AppAttach packages you would like to offer to your users, work with your certificates, and those types of things. Let me see, is there anything I forgot to mention? Well, just a couple of small things, and then I have 1 or 2 slides to end this session with. As you can see, we also monitor your saving as part of the autoscale engine. So this would be on a host pool basis, and we also monitor that on a workspace or tenant basis as well. And averages are way over 60%. So, you know, that's over the hundreds of customers that we have. We also have an autoscale report built in, so you can go to the history, look back a week, look back a custom date range, look back per day, and you will see exactly what has been going on within your environment. Of course, this is a small demo environment, so not that much going on, but it will tell you exactly per date, per day, timestamps, and so on and so forth, what it has been doing, what the results might have been, and so on and so forth. And of course, in a production environment, this will be a bit more hectic, perhaps, but this will also be downloadable, exportable, and you will have a breakdown, a brief breakdown, but still quite clear on your savings within percentages and the actual dollars that go with that as well. All right, let me hop over back to my slides. Of course, there's more to tell, more to show, you know, but we only have so much time, so please get in touch if you would like to learn a bit more. So available now, this has been available for the last couple of months, Manager for WVD Community Edition. You need to install it in exactly the same way. Go over to the Azure portal, do the installation of Manager for WVD, just like the paid for version. Give me your installation ID, or one of my colleagues will be happy to help you guys as well, of course. And Neil McLaughlin is joining Nerdio as of March 1st, so pretty excited about that. He will be able to help you with this as well. And then you will be completely free of licenses. You can use it up to 25 users for, you know, testing, running your own Azure private lab environment. So it's not meant to be used together with a company test environment, for example, or one of your customers, but for personal private Azure lab usage. We have the Tech Insider program, one of the tabs I had open within my browser when I started my demo. So please consider joining our meetup page, the Slack channel as well. We have hundreds active members already. And again, we are organizing sessions on a monthly basis. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for attending this session. Hopefully you found it informative. And again, if you would like to know more, I will make sure to share my contact details afterwards via Simon, Patrick, or, you know, just reach out to me on my socials or whatever you would like to do. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference. I'm pretty sure it will be amazing for the whole day. Until next time.
Thank you very much, Bas. And you have a couple of questions in the Q&A if you have time to answer them. And also feel free to publish your contact details in the chat if you so would like to. But thank you so much for your session. Great and very interesting as always. And I, like I mentioned in the keynote, I think that what you and Nerdio is doing is really what I envisioned once I started to talk to Microsoft partners in regards to what will be brought to the ecosystem of WVD. So thank you for being the northern star of that and inspire others to create good solutions too.